everybody. My name is Lena. I'm hosting this panel. I have the honor to host this panel. The topic is inviting gender diversity. I'm Lena, as I said. I come from Cologne in Germany, and we are in the afternoon. It's 4:15 or 4:19 to be precise. I'm very honored to be here at the Creative Approach Summit. Thank you, everybody who organized it. And I have the big honor to be here with so beautiful, wonderful, inspiring panelists. I will introduce them in a second. And it's my first time to have an ASL interpreter. So thank you so much. This is super cool. And so, yeah, it's so special. So thank you, Creative Approach, for doing this, and also for you doing this. This is also, I can watch you the whole time. We can spend the panel watching you the whole time. Okay, I'm Lena, as I said. I'm an improviser and a journalist. I work in theater, in improvised theater. I'm a teacher and I'm a performer, and I also studied acting before I studied journalism. And in journalism, my main field is a political talk show. So I'm bringing today all together here to host a panel. And I'm also one of the founder of Project Eve, which is a female feminist theater project with actresses from whole Europe, where we tried to bring more female aspects on stage in the last years. And I'm the founder of the Improv Online and the artistic director, which is the longest running digital improv festival, because we turned one last week. Yeah, that's me. And yeah, I'm going to present our panelists now. And I'm going to start with my friend and a wonderful improviser, actress, and theater artist from Austria, right next to Germany. And I'm very happy to have her here, Beatrix Brunsko from Graz. She's working in Theater am Bahnhof. She's teaching drama in the drama school in Austria. And yeah, she's a traveling improviser. And Beatrix, thank you for being here. Welcome to this panel.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here.
And from Austria, we travel quite a bit. I have to decide in which direction from my perspective. So I would say we first go to the right. So we turn east and we come to Japan, to Goma Dango. Goma Dango, she is an improviser from House of Gaishoku in Japan, and I'm very happy to have her here. Welcome, Goma Dango.
Thank you very much for having me, Lena. It's lovely to be here. So my name is Goma Dango. I improvise with the Pirates of Tokyo Bay here in Tokyo. And I also organize and run a drag house called House of Gaishoku. We have all sorts of queer performers under the lovely rainbow that we love to fly at every show. So looking forward to talking today. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu.
I think that was something friendly, so thank you for that,
Yes.
Goma. Okay,
Yes.
Great. So, and then from our perspective, to stay in this very childish version of East and West, but I turn left and we go west, straight to California, and I'm happy to have them here. It's Jess Weiner. They are event producer and childminder from Topanga in California. Welcome, Jess. Nice to have you.
Hello, nice to be here. Yes, my name is Jess. My pronouns are they, them, and I am an event producer and child mentor. And right now I'm working on this platform on Remo, producing a wellness festival for the queer community. So,
great.
Called Some of Us.
Okay, so and it's going to happen here on Remo.
It is, yeah. It's my little plug, you know. It's called Some of Us Festival, and it is happening right here. And Mark is our wonderful, one of our wonderful interpreters. And yeah, it's happening in a week. So.
Oh, great. Okay, tell us more later at the coffee table. Oh, and Lauren is already posting the link. So cool. So yeah, and that's also, please, dear audience, please out there who are listening and watching us, please use the chat. If you have any comments, if you want to ask a question, if you want to comment to anything, I will have a look at it all the time, and I would try to bring your opinion into this panel discussion. What are we talking about? The title of the panel is Inviting Gender Diversity. And this is something where I worked on a lot in the last years. But just to make this clear in the beginning, I'm a non-heterosexual, but I'm a binary person. I'm female, I identify as female. So that's the perspective I'm coming from. Yeah, but still, so my perspective is of gender diversity was in the last year mostly the perspective of female and male and how to bring more female artists on stage. That was what I'm working on in the last years, and this is where I come from, just to make it clear from the beginning. So I'm very happy to have also other perspectives on stage here in the panel. Sorry, and I have to say that I'm from Germany and English is not my native language. So if I'm doing stupid mistakes, just write them in the chat. I will make fun about it. Yeah, so this is the perspective where I'm coming from. And for me, this topic of the panel is something which has been, yeah, very important, because if you look at the theater scene and at the art world where I'm working at the moment and where I grew up, I went to drama school in Germany and everything. It is and still is, it was and still is super male dominated. And the perspectives we have as improviser on stage and the stories we tell are mostly male orientated. And for me, this is my biggest belief, is it that it's just a reflection on how society is out of the theaters and whatever we are doing on stage. So I think that we are a reflection on what is happening out there. And this is what I want to talk with you about tonight, this afternoon, whenever it is for you. And yeah, so my first question will go to Trixie directly, because I know Trixie from before. We worked together a bit, and I also know her career as an improv or as a drama teacher there. And maybe Trixie or Beatrix, you can describe how it is, how you see the situation at the moment on European stages, on Austrian stages, concerning gender diversity at the moment.
I have two different perspectives on it. Like I'm a drama teacher, and I teach at the University of Performing Arts in Graz, and we educate for the big stages, for the state theaters and all these like conservative stages. So we take 8 people in a year, and usually we had these things, we have to have 4 female and 4 male performers. That would be the best mix. And the situation I witness every year, and for 4 years I'm in the committee, or how to say this, the board that is choosing the 8, is that there are so much more female candidates, and it's at least 2/3 women and 1/3 male men who want to get in the age about between 18 and 20 years. And then we always have the thing, but we have to take 4/4. But it's just there are so many more women, and also honestly, some years we could take 8 women because they are the most talented people who auditioned. And so the problem we have is that we educate for the market, and the moment you leave school, you are out there, and then all what Lena just said happened. It's male dominated, and in the theaters there are more men than women, and then you produce more unemployed female actresses than male actresses. So that's the main thing we are like, we have to deal with. But since the last year, we made it in our school that we said, okay, we cannot do this anymore. It's just like, it's how it is. We take people in who are talented, who we think would be good as a group together, who would support each other, who are like fun to work with for 4 years as well. And where we think that they will be like cool and good actors one day, so the actresses one day. So we try to change this. It's always a discussion in the board, but we try to change this. The last year, students are 6 women and 2 men. That was the first time ever in the school that this happened. And so we start also to attract more. We also try not to take those actresses who are, or actors or candidates who, how to say this, who are the ideal of an actress, who has the word main facing is a thing. So like you educate those people who look like they should look when they go on stage. This was also a long time in our school. You had to have the small blonde girl in the group, and you had to have one big girl, and you had all these like gender stereotypes or character stereotypes had to be presented in the class so that they fit in the market then. So this is also a thing we really try to change for the last 6 years, that we try to get the people who represent the people who are out there, so that like people can connect to the actresses on stage and actors on stage, because they represent their life and being.
Yeah.
So, but it's hard.
Yeah, and I think you're already mentioning a step forward, because when I went to acting school, which is, let's say, half a year ago. No, I'm just joking. A few years ago. They told us that they will take 70% men and 30% female, because this is how the roles are in the big drama plays at the big conservative theaters.
Of course.
And so there was already an inequality in the moment when you got to the school. And this was like reproducing. So the competition between the female candidates was so much higher, because there were more female candidates but less spaces. So it's already a step forward that you say you take 4-4. So that's already.
Last year we take 6-2.
That's
so
very good. So,
really cool.
Yeah, thank you, Trixie. So Jess, you're coming a bit from a different, like, a field. You're not directly coming from the improv stage, but how do you see it in your community, like in the child producing, in the facilitator role? How is it, like, do you deal with those inequality issues, or how is it in your community, in your field?
In production, I almost mainly work in the queer community. So the answer is no, because the crux of the queer community is expression. It's the spectrum. It's not only your orientation, but gender is included in that, and so prominent too, to have so many different gender expressions. Just to qualify my proximity to acting, I did go to theater school and performing arts college for over 10 years. My partner is also an actor, so it's interesting listening to this perspective of what goes on behind the scenes of an acting school, and just kind of trying to take myself back there to my college especially, and wonder where I fit in to that, to those, like, we have to take this many women and this many men. And at the time I was not out as trans, as genderqueer. However, I was very gay. So anyway, within production, it doesn't really show up, but within child mentorship, it definitely does, because I mainly work with inner city groups, and I think in a lot of communities, gender is still very, is still the precursor. It's still, the boys have to, go out and play soccer while the girls do arts and crafts kind of thing. And the nice thing about me is that when I came into this environment, when the kids come into my environment, because I mentor at a sleepaway camp, they don't know who the counselors are going to be. And their parents, who are some of the supervisors, don't know who the counselors are going to be. So they're stuck with me. Not only that, but I'm the one that's taking care of their kids. So no matter what they think about the LGBTQ community, they're stuck with me, which is kind of nice because they want me to do a good job taking care of their kids. They have to treat me a certain way, and that breach of trust or that trust forces them to be curious instead of being judgmental in any way, or instead of being scared, which happens a lot with certain cis communities. Cis meaning that your gender relates to the one that you were born into. And so with kids, a big question is always, are you a boy or a girl? I mean, just straight up, because kids are, that's how kids are, and that's a whole conversation that I have with them, and I allow them to be curious about that. So I don't know if that's sort of answering your question in any way, but and I can go more into what that looks like, what that conversation with kids looks like. But for them, I think that I've noticed that in being curious and in having being open to having that conversation with them and allowing them to ask those blatant questions allows them to start questioning their own, where they fit into the gender spectrum. Because we all do, whether you're cis or you're trans or somewhere in between, our gender expression isn't like, I'm female, so I express my gender as female, and whatever that even means, right? So I'm reading a comment here that boys must do sports and girls have to sit and draw, right? I agree. And so a lot of the times, once they meet me and once we have these conversations and we unpack all that, you'll see a lot of the kids, whether they're boys or girls or whatever, being like, I actually want to go and do this other thing. Is that okay? And of course, I'm there to tell them it is.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. So, Goma, I asked the panelists some questions before, and I was very inspired in one of your answers, because Goma, you answered that you are in a group performing in Japan, and that you don't feel any gender issue in the performances you do on stage. So why do you think it is like that? Or what is the point that is different to maybe other performances or art surroundings?
Yeah, that's very true. In the queer performance house that I run, we have a whole litany of different performers, whether they are, cis men performing as drag queens, whether they are genderqueer performing as themselves, whether they are, we have the whole group of anyone. So we don't really think about gender a lot, especially when we're talking to people in the house. When we're talking to our audiences, we pretty much call everyone assholes, everyone uglies, just to make sure everyone feels like equally despised and put down a little bit in the show, because we think it's kind of fun. And so we don't really worry that much about it. And if we ever do come across members who do want us to approach them or identify them with a certain pronoun, we always make sure that happens. But the good thing about when we do things in Japanese is that the Japanese language doesn't really have a he or she. When we are speaking about someone in third person, we usually say someone's direct name, even if they're right in front of us. So I would be speaking to the group now, and even if I'm talking about Beatrix, I wouldn't say she or they or whatever she identifies by. I would just say Beatrix. And it might sound a little bit childish, or it might sound a little bit too careful in the English language, but in the Japanese language, that's just, we address everyone by their labels, and the label being their name plus an honorific on the end. So we're not necessarily so focused about gender. And also maybe similar to Spanish or maybe even German as well, we don't have gender expressions in nouns and adjectives either. So everything we say is very, very open and neutral. So in that sense, it's been very, very easy on people who aren't quite well versed in being careful of others' adjectives. And I see American Sign Language as well doesn't have genders. Is that true? I'm not aware of that.
Yes, it's true. So there is no, yeah. So yeah, that you're mentioning like a side point. I don't want to go into this path because this is like a whole different discussion, but you're totally right that the German language makes it very challenging, and that's why I'm always stumbling when I'm speaking English, because we have a very gender-specific language in a lot of things, and we're a bit more neutral than like all the Latin languages, like French and Spanish and Italian. It's even more difficult for to have like a neutral way, but for us as Germans, it's with the German language, it's super challenging because our language is not gender neutral. So it isn't, and it's yeah. So yeah, interesting. I truly think that and this is also just because you were already like going into this path of what can be done and what you are doing with the children and what conversations you are having. I think that like if we talk about improv or any art that brings like theater that is on stage, it's about telling stories. Like we're telling stories in any, like this is the base of the art, is telling stories. And I think, and I feel this a lot in improv, is that we are always coming back to the same stories because that's how we grew up and that's what we are doing. And it's we're at this point where I at least try to really actively break those stories and tell a different storyline, which is maybe a bit more or not maybe a bit more, but which is a bit more diverse, also including this point that all firemen are men, which is not true on stage. It's like that, most likely. And things like that. So Jess, do you think that not even like the conversations you have with the children, but also the stories that you tell them of that you're maybe producing or as a facilitator are like changing in the last, or do you actively try to change them while you're talking to the children or working with them?
I mean, yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it because I guess I am trying to change their perspective and the narrative that they have been told about gender and about themselves. And I mean, improv is interesting because we're always improvising, really. We're having conversations. I don't know. I have a general idea of what I want to say, but I don't know what I'm going to say next, technically. So with children, it really feels like you're improvising because, first of all, they're curious. And I think being curious is like the first, the number one thing you come into when you're improvising. You're curious about what's going to happen next. And you're always saying yes to pushing the narrative forward. And also with kids, imagination is, their imagination can run wild, and so can yours when you're in a conversation with them. And so anything is possible. They have been told a narrative about gender, but they're very open to having that broken down. And I think when I have these conversations with them, it's a lot of like us asking each other questions. Like the first question they always ask me is, "Are you a boy or a girl?" Straight up. And I think I said that, but my answer is, "Well, what do you think?" And they usually come up with one. "I think you're a boy." "Well, why? Why do you think I'm a boy?" "Well, because you have short hair." "Don't some girls have short hair?" And it just goes back and forth with these like questions.
Tricksy.
Oh, some boys' voices are high. I've heard, what about like boys who are sopranos, Michael Jackson. That's a bad example, but you know what I mean. And it just goes on and on until they're kind of like, I'm gonna go and think about this for a while. So in that way of asking questions and being open, opening your imagination to what's possible, I think that that storyline does end up breaking down for them, and they have to create a new one.
Yeah. Do you think, Goma, that your stories that you tell on stage in this queer performance house are different to like maybe stages that are not dedicated to be queer rainbow stage? Do you think they are different?
Very much so. I mean, I'll use terms and phrases that I think the queer community can relate to, and they know those inside jokes. They've seen those memes on the internet, and they can all appreciate them. But honestly, the majority of our fan base and the majority of our audience is comprised of cisgender heterosexual women. And so being careful with my language just to make sure that they feel included as well, not so much that you're in our space, you're going to play by our rules, but hey, we're having the best time. And if you want to have the best time too, learn a little bit about us because we're learning a little bit about you. Not even that we're learning a little about you, but we all grew up in your world as well. So welcome to our world, and this is how we're going to do it. So I am very careful about not laying too heavily on all of the queer jokes all the time. But yeah, it's kind of a give and take, I'd say.
Yeah. And Trixie, do you is this something that you actively try on stage to change the narratives you're working with?
Yeah, I try to, like, I'm more than 50 years old, and like I'm like grew up in this world, in this man dominated world, and so it's in my bones. And if you improvise, you just like you let your reflex out. And when you say all firemen are men on stage, I also catch myself being a firefighter like this, and never like in the first thing. So you always have
just to tell you that even if I'm only 13, I feel the same, Trixie. So
yeah.
you know. Yeah.
But that's the thing, like to go against your whole education and you against your whole now it's my socialization. Maybe you can.
Socialization, yeah.
Thank you very much. And
social education, I would translate it as social education.
Thank you very much. So this is a fight I'm constantly fighting with myself, and I'm getting better and better. But I was just thinking about like the stories we tell, and also what stories, so I have to relate to chess, what stories we tell the kids. What stories do they see when they turn on TV, or when they go into a movie theater, or when they go into a theater? It's like, and this is where the theater is responsible. It's like, what stories do you bring on stage? Are you continuing to tell the old stories, like the old stories, or do you start to tell them in a new way? Maybe telling, having, I don't know, like Shakespeare did. In Shakespeare plays, it was like men, women. Sometimes you didn't know. Of course, they were all played by men, but also this is an example that the gender of the character was not really tied down to the gender of the actor. And when like was what we try in drama school is at the moment like to have scenes, and it doesn't matter if it's played by a boy or by a girl, because it's a human interaction, it's a human thing, it's a relationship between two people. Sometimes it matters what the gender is, but most of the time it actually doesn't matter, because the story can happen between every kind of gender, every kind of person. It's about what's going on between two people. So I think to start to produce on stages and on screens stories that are not related to gender. That's the responsibility of what the theater has, so that the education and so socialization starts to change. So that's the thing. This is what our responsibility is. And I just have to say to Jess, it's like I'm from Austria. Austria is a very Catholic, conservative country. And like nobody in Austria, like as far as I know, it's probably very unjust to say this, but as far as I am aware of, that boys and girls, when they come into what a kind of like a youth camp or something like this, they will not get asked if they are boys or girls, what they feel about. This is not the question. This is asked in Austria to kids. So in my country, I think it's time that these are the first questions you ask kids when they come to you. So
Yeah.
this has to change.
So because we only have like 11 minutes left, which is incredible, but time is running. I Lauren asked something in the chat, and I wanna wrap it up to a question that I want to give to you. It's like, because Lauren asked, is it the casting, the back to the beginning? Is it the education system and the mission, or is it parenting life, or the ownership of the stories, or whatever? So I think, what do you think would be the most important bits and a piece, where, at which direction, which should be like changed to make the art form theater a bit more gender inclusive, gender diverse, which should be the point where there should be change? And Goma, I'm going to give it to you, because as you said before, that your stage is a pretty diverse already. So what could be done to make this not only in your house of performance?
Sure. Well, leaving the drag house to the side, like let's go to the improv stage, which I perform with. And when I perform with them, sometimes I perform in drag, sometimes I perform without makeup, and it just depends on the night. And the thing that I like to do whenever I am about to do a new character, when I'm about to enter a scene, I think about what is the most stereotypical expression of this character, and then I try to do the exact opposite. So like going to Trixie's example of a fireman, I'll come in and I'll try to act like my gayest self, but I'll state very clearly, I'm here to put out the fire. Who's hot? And like, I'll just make it like that. And everyone can know I'm a fucking fireman. Deal with it. And then it's set and everyone is kind of like, oh, I never saw a fireman like that before. Okay, cool. And so just coming into it, like, it's a little bit, you know, making fun of the gay lisp. It's making fun of the queer community a little bit. But I mean, everyone deserves to be made fun of when you're on this comedy stage. So I think it's perfectly fine. But yeah, going for the opposite is something that I like to do a lot.
Thank you. Beatrix, what do you think? Where is the point that has to be changed? Like,
Yeah, I think, as you said you said that, Lena, before. I think to leave the cliche we always play on an improv stage. I think it's very it's very important to use your own stories, to use your own life, your experience you have with your everyday life, because then it's special. And then even if then you bring something on stage which is very old-fashioned, but it comes from an experience you went through, then you can question it, and then you can take a different point of view on things. So as an improviser, we always tend to go for the cliche and play something we imagine how it is. But if we would use us more and what we see, and also our political attitude to things and what we think about the world, if we put this on stage into our characters, then I think a lot is changing. Or at least it's different than the 1,500 sister scenes where sisters are fighting about a man or a piece of clothing.
Yeah, while doing nail polish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I hope.
Yeah. So and Jess, what do you think is the point to open it up to more diverse? I have an idea what you might answer, but I'm going to leave it to you.
I don't know. I mean, honestly, as a viewer and lover of theater and film, I think that theater and film are the answer to social education, what you're talking about, because it's what drives people's knowledge of culture. And, you know, shows like, I don't know if anyone here has seen Euphoria. If you haven't, go watch that show, because it takes a trans character and it humanizes them. First of all, it doesn't tell the story, I'm a trans person, this is my trans experience. It just puts this character in the world and humanizes them and shows that they're just as normal as any other kid in this high school. You know, so it's kind of like breaking down gender to a point of like, it's a non-issue, you know?
Like they took their gender and it's not a part of the story, right?
Right. Exactly. I mean, you have parts of the character's experience as a trans person, but the purpose of the show isn't about their trans experience. And that's what humanizes them. And shows like that, I think, especially because it's set in high school and a lot of kids are watching that show, it's so important to have that visibility, and also to just like I said, to make it a non-issue in that way. And of course, I'm coming from the trans perspective. You know. Also, Pose. Go watch Pose.
Okay, so yeah, dear audience, if you have any comments you want to make, please put them down. No, so there's already coming one. In Commedia dell'arte, women played female characters, and this was important because if a man plays a woman, he is deciding what a woman is saying. In the same way, it is important that today any gender must be free to go on stage representing itself. Paolo, thank you so much, because that would have been like the last thing from my side, because I totally agree to everything what you said, absolutely. But for me, it's also a question of being represented on stage and seeing as an audience member and as somebody who's sometimes audience, sometimes on stage, and also teaching a lot, is like seeing being represented on stage. So seeing, for example, female leadership on stage, seeing queer characters on stage, seeing trans characters on stage, seeing all this on stage, just normalize it, as you said, just humanize it, just being there and being a firefighter, or whatever. And this is for me because it's also something where you can see, like, as Trixie said in the beginning, a lot of the people who are doing improv or arts in Germany are female, are girls or women. But if you go into the professional life, it becomes more and more and more and more male. So the female and also the LGBTQIA, the queer people, they are left out at one point. They do it as a hobby and then they are gone. And I think it's because they see themselves not represented. So you can create your own community, like you did in Japan, Goma, like creating a queer house of performances, a drag performance house, and then you create your own community. And I would say that's really important, is to bring those, to be more diverse, really be on stage. So have diverse actors and directors and everything. So this would be like my point, where we like continue, and everything what you said fills in there. So yeah, and we have another comment. Thinking back about TV from my childhood, the heroes were a specific type of person, sporty, masculine men. So were the comic relief characters nerds and geeks, and the villains, evil, often mysterious, were queer. Do you think media is improving fast enough? That's a question from Christian. What do you think? Do you think that the media...
I think this is a very, very new discussion. Like, what kind of media? You have so many channels and media, so every community has the one channel that is representing their beliefs. Like the worst thing at like Fox TV, for instance, you know. So that's the question, is the media. There is no the media. When I grew up, there was one channel of TV, you know, and now you choose the channel and the stories you're looking for. So maybe there should be more media that are representing our beliefs we are talking at the moment about. Because no, this is just such a big discussion at the moment, like in my head, like all these bubbles we are living in, all these communities we are living in, and how do we pop our bubbles again so that we kind of start to come together again in a way. This is such a huge thing. And yeah, I think maybe it starts with what Jess said, asking children what they think they are. And it's all about how we educate the next generation, and what we tell them, and what stories we allow them to live.
So thank you. Do you want to add something, Goma or Jess? If not, we have like 1 minute left to before we go to the coffee table, I think, for a while.
Sure, I'm sure Jess can talk more about the aspects of disclosure. I've never seen it myself, but I think a lot of TV shows nowadays not only focus on less cliche characters, but also on the idea of anti-heroes in a lot of the stories. And so when it comes to anti-heroes, we kind of see our expectations getting completely smashed, and that's kind of nice. So you see that in a lot of different ways, not just with gender roles. So I think that's kind of cool recently. Jess, go for it.
I mean, just to close it out, is that there is a lot of content out there. I don't know what's available in different countries, but there's so much media and content on all these different streaming platforms. So, I think if people really want to be educated on this and open their mind, search for that content. It's definitely out there. And Disclosure isn't a documentary about how queer and trans characters are portrayed as villains generally throughout history. And it's when you watch it, it's like pretty shocking, especially because they go back through all the classic movies that we all really love. So, But I would
hearing that right now, it makes me think of like even Disney movies like Lion King or Aladdin, like Jafar and Scar, the gayest, right?
So
Yeah,
exactly.
So that brings me, sorry, Paul, I have a wrap-up question, and I want you to answer it in a few seconds. So, but before I'm asking you this wrap-up question, I'm going to thank you. Thank you to our wonderful interpreter again. Thank you to Beatrix Brunschko in Graz in Austria. Thank you to Jess in California, and thank you to Goma in Japan. Thank you very much for being here. My wrap-up question. So what would be your a dream come true character, a diverse character that you want to play, perform, or just in your like produce that you want to see on stage or be on stage? Goma, do you have an answer?
Absolutely. It would be any show on Netflix starring myself with a paycheck.
With a what?
With a paycheck.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Girl, I cannot wait to see you on Netflix. I'll look out for it.
Jess, what is your dream come true character?
Disney. Definitely. Yeah. A trans or genderqueer Disney hero.
Great. You have a fan already.
I mean, think about how much that would change things, like Disney kind of, endorsing the queer trans community would be huge.
Yeah. And Beatrix, what about you?
That's hard to say. I'm at the moment, the thing I'm working at the moment, it's a musical in a high school. It's 16-year-old kids, and we write the story. They write the story before we produce it, and it's on the countryside, and they want the love interests being two girls. And I'm working at that school for 15 years, and every 3 years I do a musical with them. And I always planned it in the beginning when we started. And I said, it doesn't have to be about the boy or girl. And this year they said, you know what, we want to have a gay a gay couple. It can be two girls or two men, but it's mostly girls in the cast, so it will be two girls. And I'm just so happy that after 15 years it's happening, and it was not coming from me, it was coming out of them. And it's really in a village in the countryside of Austria. And now we are all excited because we are very curious what the community will say when we will open the show, because this is something that will be huge.
Yeah.
So
So you be like Mark, being like yay all the time. So yeah, so cool. Thank you so much. Hope to see you very soon in this digital world. So I give it back to Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, and yeah, thank you so much to all.